My goodness, I was muted. Hello, Sassenx. Hello, Geeksters. Welcome to Geeksterilia's podcast, your favorite podcast about sci-fi fantasy related content as well as pop culture in general. So, today, if you didn't get a hint with the word Sassenach, well, let me tell you that we are going to discuss a romance time travel um, series. And well, we are going to discuss it with John, none other than John. Hi, John. How are you?
Hello. Good. Are you? I'm doing great. I saw that title Outlander with John Webster. I was like, finally. Yes.
Yeah, it does something to see your name on the screen, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is serious. This is really happening. Yeah, yeah. I know, I know. Um, So, okay, welcome everybody. I see some familiar faces. Hi, Danny. Hi, Patty. Hi, Erin. Thank you for being here with us. And for all of you who are out there and will join us a little bit later, well, just remember that you can always um, you're always welcome to join us despite the spoilers because there will be spoilers here. And on another topic, if you are if you like what I do, you are more than welcome to um, join me as patron and or uh, use the super chat and super stickers, and that will be much appreciated. So well, and if not, it's always great to have you here either way. So I always enjoy sharing this content with you guys. So yeah, welcome. Okay, so we're going to discuss Outlander, and for those of you who are not really so familiar with the show, well, in this podcast, we always try to give you a little um um I just missed the word I was trying to use.
Overview
Summary, like a
summary.
summary. Yeah, yeah, like a little summary about the plot, and so you can know what we're going to talk about, and if you're interested in finishing the whole streaming with us, or if you want to if you liked the show plot and you want to watch it after and then come back to us, you're more than welcome to do that. So, okay, Outlander. Like I said in the beginning of this video, well, this is essentially a time travel show with a lot of romance, a lot of naked sex scenes, um, yeah, a lot of sexy scenes, tons of annoyingly beautiful people. And
I
okay,
know. Well,
yeah.
there's obstacles that you have to get through to enjoy the show.
Oh,
What can we
yeah.
say?
Super
I
true.
Yeah, I can I just say real quick, I want to give a shout out. She's not going to be in the chat unless she decides to pop in, but I wanted to say hi to my godmother, Marianne, who is also a super fan of this show. And she, I believe, is watching now. If she's not watching now, she'll be watching it tomorrow. But her and I just watched the sixth season together when I was on vacation. So hi, Marianne.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you for watching. And well, like I was saying, another thing that is really present in the show is, like Patty says, a lot of trauma. Like a lot of trauma, but basically it's a love story, but it is basically a love story between the two main characters. And well, the main protagonist of this show is Claire. At that time, is Claire Randall. At the time, she is Claire Randall. She is a nurse. She's a military nurse that right after World War II, she um, she reencounters with her husband, who was, well, he was serving, and well, they decide to make a little trip to Scotland. They are both of them are English, so they go on a vacation to Scotland, and they stay in a little town, and they see this sort of ritual around some magic stones, and Claire is very intrigued by that. So the next morning, she decides to pay a visit to those stones, and only to be transported 200 years in the past. And she's like, "Oh my god, what just happened?" And then she just finds the evil doppelganger of her husband.
Oh my God, Tobias Menzies plays Frank
Mm,
and Blackjack Randall, and oh my
mhm.
God, he's so good in this show.
Oh yeah.
He's like, because I remember when I first discovered this show during the first season, and that's part of what was so compelling was that you do fall in love with Jamie and Claire as a couple, but you're also like, but Frank is a really good guy and he's
Mhm.
sweet, and I do want her to get back to him. But then on the other side of that, he plays Blackjack, who is like the most horrible person in the world,
Oh yeah.
and he's so good at playing both of those. I love it.
Yeah, it's an interesting contrast, right? To use the same actor for so different characters in that impact directly impact Claire's life. So I think that was a great move from the show. Well, this series is based on Diana Gabaldon's novels Outlander, and well, the series has not reached past the novels, so we have material for many seasons more. Right now, there are only 6 seasons. Well, only there are 6 seasons so far, and yeah, well, it's a show that is it's on Stars in the US. In Mexico, is in, oh my goodness, I don't remember it. I think it's in Apple TV or something. Some, I don't
Mm.
know. Um, I'll tell you later once I confirm this information. But anyway, so she gets transported 200 years back, right at the time of the Jacobite rebellion, and well, she runs into this clan of really peculiar Scottish men.
Colorful characters.
Yes.
Which, and I actually I did rewatch the premiere episode in preparation for this, as well as some scenes from later in the first half of the first season.
Mhm.
Um, and I was just reminded of how much I love all of these characters, because things have changed so much
Mhm.
over the course of the show, and they've gone such distance, and characters come and go, and to once again get all these wonderful characters who, some of them are lovable, some of them are
Not so much.
not so much, but nonetheless extremely interesting. I was reminded of how much, maybe I don't love him as a person, but I love Dougal as a character,
Oh yeah.
who's played by Graham McTavish,
Mhm.
because he's at different points, like, he comes at different points, he comes to Claire's rescue, and then he's like the bane of her existence, and then he's just plain awful at other times.
Oh yes, he was. I remember that during the first season and the second season as well. He was one of my favorite characters just because of that. I mean, not because he was a great person, because he wasn't,
Yeah,
but because he was a character that had so many sides. He had sometimes he had great intentions, but the way that he did things was just wrong,
yeah.
or sometimes the other way around. And he gave so much to the story.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments of the entire show is it's during one of the season one episodes, which to my mind is still one of the best episodes of the series, which is the Garrison Commander. It's when Claire is being interrogated by Blackjack,
Hmm.
and then there's a horrible turn of events where well, we're in the first half, so I won't give spoilers away, but
Hmm.
like it's not going well.
Hmm.
And then Dougal just busts in the door, and he's got like the Bear McCreary's wonderful Scottish music behind him, and it's
Hmm.
like it's a heroic moment, and you feel like, yeah, Dougal's here. And then like, but then an episode later you'll be like, God, he's such an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah, he played with your emotions
Yeah.
really, really intensely. And yeah, he's a wonderful character. And well, back to the main plot. Well, she runs into this clan of really interesting Scottish men, in which her future love of her life is right there, right in between. And well, she I think that it was some sort of a love at first sight, I believe, but like recluded love of at
Mm.
first sight, right? Because like we know she was married to Frank back in the 40s and in 1940s. And yeah, because we are in the 1740s. Right. So yeah, we need to specify which 40s we are at. So yeah, I mean this is a red-headed, super high, super tall Highlander, and I don't know, super handsome. And she's like, I mean, she immediately. I mean, you look at him and it's, I don't
Well,
know.
it's funny. I always say, because I was a huge fan of Tobias Menzies going into this show
Hmm.
when I first saw it. So in a weird way, like my allegiance right off the bat is with
Hmm.
Frank, because I'm like, this is the guy who was in Rome. I like him. Uh, and and plus, if you know anything about the Outlander series, you know that Jamie has legions of fans, the vast majority of them female, who think
Oh
he's
yeah.
the greatest thing on earth. So, as a guy coming into the show, I'm probably like, oh God, this guy's loved by all the women. But it's a testament to how great, how wonderfully the character's written, and also uh, how great of a performance. Why am I drawing a blank? I know these actors' names. Um,
You
uh,
mean Sam Hugan?
Sam Hewen, yeah, yeah, and it's he's so phenomenal in the role that
Hmm.
honestly, like I loved his character straight off the bat, and it takes not long at all before you're like, yep. I see the sparks flying. I'm on board with
Yeah.
these two. But that's what's so great about, especially the first season, is the tug and pull. You're like, you know, you're on board with that, but you also feel Claire's desire to get back home,
Hmm.
to Frank. And so it's like, but then halfway through the season, I'm like, when she says, it, um, I guess this could be, I mean, the show goes on, so this won't be a surprise. When she says the line, take me home to Lallybroch, uh,
Hmm.
I'm like, my heart's melting at that point. I'm so
Hmm.
invested in them. So yeah, I don't blame her.
Neither do I. Yeah. I mean, okay. To be fair, I'm not the type. Well, Sam Houston is not really my type of guy. I mean, I don't really like the super, super hot, super, I don't know, strong and super manly men. I'm more of a frank kind of girl.
Frank,
Yeah. But I mean, you see the sparks flying. I mean, she never had that chemistry with Frank. They loved each other, yes, but I mean, Claire and Jamie were really meant to be. The I mean, at the beginning of the relationship, they just fight a lot
Yeah.
because Claire is a little bit um kind of a snob around these men because she sees them. I mean, she's an educated woman from another time in the future, so she has different values, different points of view, a more feminist way of seeing things.
Oh,
And
there's the part where she's, throwing out curses left and right, and Doodle's like, I've never heard a woman speak such language in all my life.
yeah, but that's not even the beginning of of their issues. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, she sees these men as cavemen. These are cavemen for her. And I mean, even in the 1940s, she was an educated woman
Mm.
who had an important job during the war. So I mean, so she has a different point of view even in her own time. I mean, she's a strong woman. She's not only a strong woman in terms of her knowledge, and it's more of of her character. She is really opinionated and really stubborn. So naturally, when you take a woman like that into that kind of environment, where women were just not a big thing, I mean, they were like property. So she rebels, and this causes her a lot of trouble, and Jamie too.
Yeah, no, what I like about the Jamie Claire relationship is that, like, he's very, like, as much as we love Jamie, he's still a product of his time,
Hmm.
but she has such an effect on him that, bit by bit over the course of the whole series, you know she's really bending to her will, and like setting him right about a lot
Hmm.
of things, and so that their marriage becomes very much one of equal respect,
Hmm.
and they're partners, true partners in their relationship.
Yes, which was incredibly rare at the time, and even in Claire's own
Yeah.
time. So yeah, this dynamic was super interesting to watch how they start being, you know, uh, they fight it all the time. They're fighting all the time, and eventually they fall in love, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and what I love, and by the way, like, I'm supposed to say the obligatory thing to, any men watching the stream, like, oh, don't worry, it's got politics and it's got, like,
Mhm.
battles, and like, dudes, just watch it because it's a phenomenal romance. It has all that other stuff, but don't be
Yeah,
afraid of the
don't
romance.
be
Like,
afraid of romance. Don't be
that's
afraid of.
that's what's so great about this. And I
Mhm.
did get to watch a bit again of the episode The Wedding, which is like a tour de force.
Mhm.
It's beautiful. And what I love about that episode is that that's an episode that really, like, they fall in love over the course of that episode.
Mhm.
And it's like, it doesn't happen the way it's supposed to, where you fall in love and then get married. They get
Mhm.
married and then they really fall in love.
Yes, because well, for those who haven't watched the show, she was sort of forced to marry him, but not because he forced her,
Mm.
but because the circumstances, in order for her to survive in that environment, well, she had to be married, and he was the only bachelor available at the time. I mean,
Which
lucky girl.
in retrospect, like, she's it's actually quite lucky that Dougal was in a, like, charitable mood, because like, I'm actually surprised that he didn't insist on being, the husband.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was
But
unrealistically lucky. Uh,
But also he has a lot of stuff going on
mm-hmm,
like that we don't know about at that point as well. So, but and it doesn't mean that he doesn't change his tune later on.
mm-hmm,
But yeah, no, it's and that's another great point. There's that moment where it's decided that Jamie is going to be the one, and I love that bit where they have their little chat like by the stream, and then this won't be the only time I rave about Bear McCreary's music. There's
mm-hmm.
this wonderful beat where it, she's like and I love the way their relationship gets started off on this kind of moment of, oh wow, where she says, doesn't it bother you that that I'm not a virgin? And he says, no, so long as it doesn't bother you that I am. And then the music kicks in. It's this like jaunty
Mm-hmm.
music, and then she just like slugs back the alcohol and marches past them all on screen as the credits come up. It's beautiful.
Yeah, but one of the adorable things about that scene and about the whole um wedding night thing is that, well, we have to this point, we as an audience have seen them fight and have this really strong chemistry and these really strong characters constantly crashing into each other, and that there are sparks there, that there's something big right there, and they were building up to this moment, and then the first the first time that they have sex is completely anticlimactic because I mean Jamie is a virgin. He doesn't know anything,
He's
and
going off of advice of the two knuckleheads.
yeah, and he basically
With,
sucks.
yeah.
And Claire was like, "Oh gosh, okay." Yeah, Claire was a little bit like,
Which, by the way,
okay.
the two knuckleheads I'm referring to are, I think, Angus and Rupert, who
Oh yeah,
are
yeah.
adorable, but also, they also have their moments of like,
Hmm.
but by the end, they're both incredibly lovable. And,
Yeah.
but expert, like not the people you want to be taking advice from about what to do on your marriage night.
Hmm. Yeah, but I found that scene adorable. I mean,
Yeah.
the face of Claire. I mean, the disappointment. It was just so on point. And she's just like, okay, I'm gonna have to teach this guy to do what I like, and I like that. Well, she wasn't by this point. She was on this mind frame that she has just reconciled with the idea that she might not be able to go back to Frank.
Yeah.
So she was like, okay, I might as well start to enjoy this. I mean, there's no other way to do this. I mean, I'm gonna have to start living in this moment. So she finally takes the decision to actually be a wife to Jamie, and the scene where she starts starts teaching him how to do it is beautiful, because this is where she realizes that she needs to live in the moment and start. I mean,
Yeah. And there's this beautiful bit where, because of course she was drunk for for the wedding, because
yeah.
she's going through a lot.
Hmm.
So he's recounting basically the story of the day and everything
Hmm.
he's done leading up to it, getting the wedding ring made and all this stuff, and he's going through the wedding, and you see that they're starting to get comfortable with one another and to fall for each other. And then when the next time it comes, and they're both fully giving themselves over to it,
Hmm.
it's just beautiful. And I don't mind saying, heart palpitation causing.
Hmm.
And uh, yeah, and then what I like is there's also a third moment before the end of the episode where, um, after he gives her the pearls,
Hmm.
his mother's pearls, and then um, they have sex again, and I liken it to. There's three scenes throughout the episode. You've got the first one which is very nerve wracking. They don't really know each other, intimately. And then the second scene is like newlyweds who are falling in love, and then the third scene is, I feel like they've recognized each other as, even if they're not openly like saying it, I feel like they've achieved that level of being the soulmates that they are by the end of the episode.
Hmm.
And it's just beautiful the way the story of that episode unfolds.
Yeah, and even during that time, Claire had a, her fair share of culture shock moments, like the time when he spanked her. I don't even remember why he spanked her, but she got
Oh,
really mad. And
well, and I'm not even sure, like, I know that this was a point that a lot of people didn't care for, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I think it was because
someone told
oh,
him.
it was because she ran off
Mm.
when she saw the stones,
Oh, okay, yeah.
and obviously she can't at that point tell them the reason why she ran
Hmm.
off, and it resulted in her getting captured again
Hmm.
and put, and from their point of view, put all of their lives in danger and all that. So that was the reason why, like, it was decreed that she had to be punished, which is such
Hmm.
bull. but but then we do get, like the big where she's kicking him in the face. She's calling him a masochist,
Hmm.
and so it's, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that overall, because it's like, he shouldn't be doing that anyway. I don't care what time it is, what year it is. but it also starts to feed into the, their dynamic of, it's even fun to watch them like beat each other up.
Patty. She says, I would not be mad if Jamie did that to me. Well, I'd misbehave. Oh, Patty, you naughty girl. But okay.
I mean, well, even later, I think Jamie asks, and you'd call me a sadist. What is that? And then
Hmm.
she says, someone who,
Oh,
enjoys
yeah, yeah.
inflicting pain for sexual pleasure. And then he actually says, well, not can't really argue with that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, one of the main conflicts of the whole series, maybe, possibly, is precisely Claire's knowledge.
Yeah.
She immediately gets called a witch because, for ages, women have been threatening men with their knowledge. So if they know things, they are witches, and witches are bad.
Oh God. And now you've just
Hmm.
reminded me of how much I hate that the Reverend character in the first
Mm.
season. Um, the one who, like, she makes the mistake of, like, uh questioning him, on his, like, judgment on, medical issues and in the town and all that stuff. And it's like, but she's headed for a witch trial at that point.
Yes, and I mean, if she had been an engineer or any other field, it maybe she would have, I don't know, passed the whole conflict without, you know, a big deal, right? But she was a medic. She was a nurse. She had medical knowledge. She healed people. And well, healers back in the day, back in that time, they were considered some sort of magical beings, or I don't know, whatever, or they have magical powers, and therefore they were able to heal people. And well, I mean, that added to
Yeah.
the conflict there.
And also,
Hmm.
she doesn't exactly end up making the best friend in the whole wide world that she could have.
Oh yeah.
Good old Dallas.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
who maybe it's a bit too early in the stream to start talking about uh, her whole story, but
Well, to this point, all we know about her is that she does witchcraft.
mhm.
I mean, she is quite literally a witch. Whether she has powers or not, that's a whole other story, but she does practice that and she's proud of it. And well, she only hides just because of survival uh things. But yeah, Gailey's is
Oh yeah, Aaron, I love her character.
mhm.
I'm just saying she doesn't do Claire any favors. Or
At any time.
her acquaintance, being her acquaintance does not do her any favors. But I love her character, and I like there's some weird shit that goes on with her character by the
Hmm.
time season 3 rolls around, and I loved it. She's wonderfully batty.
Hmm. She's just one crazy bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a few words, that's who she is. But yeah, I mean, she Claire gets becomes a friend with her, and obviously the people around didn't like that, and that I mean that filled up the rumors that she was a witch, and she got rejected by people, even though she helped them a lot, especially after any battle. And well, she quickly makes a few enemies, not just Randall,
Yeah, it
but
never ends for her, honestly. It's
mhm,
because she has this unending desire, which is why we love her, to help people and to use
mhm.
her knowledge to help people. And unfortunately, it keeps causing trouble for her throughout the entire series.
Yes, but maybe one of the things is not just that, but her own character. I mean, she is really really stubborn, and she
Mhm.
is really really arrogant sometimes. She is arrogant sometimes, and this her stubbornness is what makes well, I mean, she's problematic because of that, and not just because of the moral situations of the time, but because she actually puts them in danger for some of her decisions. And well, obviously she's not ill intended by doing
Yeah.
this. It's just her trying to see the world, the world she's in right now, with her mindset from the future, right? She's not, it's her process to adapt to the the the, the time that she is currently in. And she struggles a lot with that because she sees a lot of injustice, and she's basically a warrior, but I mean, she's not a fighter, but she's a warrior. And and she can't just stand injustice, and she speaks about it, she speaks her mind, and that was like super problematic at the time. But and yeah, that gets Jamie in trouble, that gets the whole clan in trouble sometimes, and her. I mean,
Yeah.
she
Her.
yeah, so I
There's a
mean,
moment. There's a moment like we won't get into the specifics, but you know something really bad happens at the end of season 5,
mhm.
and then in season 6, there's people calling her a witch, and you know and then one of the other characters is like, doesn't that concern you, and she's just sort of nonchalantly like brushing it off
Mhm.
when it should extremely concern her,
Mhm.
considering all that she's been through. But I think that stubbornness is the right word. She has a stubborn quality where she's just gonna push through all that to, do see what she feels to be the right thing,
Mhm.
and but it's just doesn't always work out so great for her and the people around her.
Yeah, and even in season 6, you kind of get a moment where she realizes the consequences of her stubbornness, and she blames herself for everything that both Jamie and her have been through, and the impact that her decisions have had on the people around her. And she feels incredibly guilty, but then again, of course, she didn't mean
Yeah,
wrong. I mean, she was just basically following her heart. Sure, she could have been a little more wise. uh
but that's the thing about hindsight. It's
yeah.
she. I think she does. What I think Patty is saying. Yeah, she wants to act as she would in the present time,
Mm-hmm.
and we love her for that. We love her for the fact that she's gonna push forward, and you know and set certain people right, and be like, no, this is the way it's supposed to be
Yeah.
done. But it doesn't mean it's not gonna lead to bad places.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do have the urge to, I don't know, just Claire. Just please I don't know, pay attention to what's around you. uh but yeah, I mean, most of the times she's pretty much always right, and yeah, you love her for that, like you said. I mean, yeah.
Well, and also the story does lull you into sometimes a false sense of security, because
Hmm.
Claire, when she's, deciding to do certain things, she feels righteous, and we feel that. And
Hmm.
then a lot of times she pulls things off, and it works out fine. And then sometimes it doesn't, and it goes horribly, horribly wrong.
Hmm.
And that's where the show kind of, knocks us off our feet. But yeah. Um
Yeah,
God,
but
it puts you through the emotional ringer. What can I
oh
say?
yeah, and well, one of the things that I like about this show, well, I both like it and I sometimes I hate it, but they don't really mess up with the consequences of the choices of these characters. I mean, these are real, serious, huge, horrible consequences sometimes. And well, it gives some realism to the story, because I mean, we sometimes say that, well, we keep saying that our time is horrible and difficult and, I don't know, so surreal, and you sometimes think that we have never been worse in time, but we have. We tend to forget that we have had been in way worse than we are today. We are truly at our best time right now. That's
Yeah,
pretty.
well, because the decision, later in the series,
Hmm.
for certain characters to go back in time to, you know, um, whatever century it is,
Hmm.
it's a big decision, because
Hmm.
it's like, you want to go back to that period for love. That's great, but it's a really freaking hard life.
Yeah.
And um, the state of like medicine is horrible.
Hmm.
There's all these horrible wars that you're going to be in the
It.
middle of,
Yeah.
and it's not, yeah, it's not easy. And speaking of wars, I will say, maybe we'll get to it later on, but a big part of this story is these larger historical conflicts,
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of provide the backdrop of the story. We in the earlier seasons, it's the Jacobite rebellion leading to the Battle of Culloden, and then in later seasons, it's the American Revolution, which
Mm-hmm.
it's so funny because I love the entire show, but I will say that maybe it's the thing about me being an American, but I've never found American history as interesting as European history. So I think for that reason, like I'm
uh,
always gonna sort of love the earlier seasons just a little bit more, just
mm-hmm.
because I especially Scottish history. I love all that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, but yeah. So for the people who are demanding that there be, something else to the show, there's a lot of big like historical drama, but it's the
Yeah.
romance, people. You know
Yeah. I mean, don't be afraid of romance if you are a guy.
exactly.
I promise you, your balls won't fall off your body if you watch romance and enjoy it. I promise you. I promise. If that's what you're afraid of, I promise you that won't happen. You might as well enjoy it. And well, I mean, I find it funny because here in Mexico we have, well, basically in the whole Latin America. I don't know if it's a similar concept for you guys, but here we have the concept of being a señora, like a ma'am, like a ma'am. I mean, like I said on my tweet, like when we were joking about it, um, being a señora is a true way of life. You don't have to be a middle-aged married woman in order to be a señora. You just have to enjoy these hot ramen shows like Outlander, like Bridgerton. You have to. You are a señora if you enjoy buying plants and caring for them, and they don't die in your hands, and you enjoy cleaning your house. You enjoy. You're very happy and excited when you buy a new pan and that sort of stuff. When that's the sort of stuff that makes you a señora. It's stereotypically what you would associate with a married middle-aged woman in Latin America.
Okay, well, I don't know
Uh-huh.
about some of that,
Mm-hmm.
but I've definitely planted my flag with romantic stories,
Mm-hmm.
as I've so far been on this channel for Pride and Prejudice
Mm-hmm.
and Outlander now. So
Mm-hmm.
I just adore these stories. It's the reason why Outlander has remained one of my absolute favorite shows over the past. God, how many years now? It started in 2014, so it's been like 8 years. It's because I have fallen in love with uh, Jamie and Claire. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like I come back, you know, to the show each year because I can't wait to see, not just what they're up to, but
Mm-hmm.
like just go through, all the emotions that they feel for each other, and yeah, the steamy scenes too, but
Of course.
but they're so damn well good. So yeah.
Uh-huh.
But no, it's their story is just so captivating to
Mm-hmm.
me, and it always has me on the edge of my seat. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I found that some of the latest, I mean, some seasons have had some ups and downs. I mean, it's not as a perfect series, of course, and sometimes there are much more exciting moments than others. For example, to be honest, the last season for me was a little slow and a little on the low side, right? I mean, in the show as a
which
whole.
which one is that, the most recent season?
Yeah, the most recent season. I
Which
just
is funny because it's the shortest amount of episodes.
Mhm.
out of any of the seasons so far. No, I don't know. Certainly the last season kind of shocked me with where it went. I was like, oh no. But I don't know. I'd say that if we're ranking seasons, season 4 was probably my low point. Not because it wasn't good, but just because I think that's the season where it felt like there was the least amount of like tension and drama, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But and I don't want this to make it sound like I have a lesser opinion of the later seasons, because actually I've quite enjoyed both seasons 5 and 6, which I think were incredible for different reasons. But like my favorite is always going to be those early seasons, particularly the beginning of the show. Because I think part of that is because I didn't like get into Outlander because a bunch of my friends were into it. I discovered it because I think I read something online about the fact that the showrunner was Ronald D. Moore, who had done Battlestar Galactica, which I absolutely adored, and Bear McCreary was doing the music, and then Dwalin from The Hobbit was and so I just kind of gave it a chance, and I think I caught onto it after the first 8 episodes had aired, and it was on hiatus before the rest of the first season finished up. So I watched those first 8 episodes just kind of like in a bubble. And so what's great about those initial episodes is it really is the falling in love story, you know, between Jamie and Claire, and then you've got Frank on the other side of it. So it's actually a beautiful love triangle, those you know, in those early episodes. And I wasn't reading comments on Twitter, and so it was just like me and that initial story. So for me, that's why I think those early episodes will always be like the crown and the jewel, because it was something very special to me. That said, I have loved the entire rest of the show. You know, highlights being like, you know, there's season 3 when, you know, the print shop episode, which is phenomenal.
That's one of my favorites as well. Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree with you. The first 2 seasons were probably the best. My least favorite moments were, well, pretty much all of season 6, except for the last 2 episodes. And the other low point for me was the beginning of season 3, because it was so sad. I mean, I'm not saying that it was bad, but it was hard to watch, because you had this incredible romance that it was so intense and so, I mean, so big, and to watch the characters being apart from each other and what they had to go through, especially Jamie, it was painful. It was really painful.
It's funny because I remember my mom having a similar attitude. She was like, when are they going to get back together? But for me, like, but that's what makes, you know, the episode when they reunite so sweet, is that you've gone through the agony of the early part of the season with them being apart, and so yeah, and I don't know, I did enjoy, like, even though it wasn't that pleasant going through the emotional pain, but I did enjoy getting to pick back up with Frank's story, and it sort of ripped my guts out just seeing where he and Claire were throughout that portion of the story, because you know, it's nobody's fault. It's just, you know, and they just, you know, she'd moved on with the true love of her life, and, you know, and it's just pain. It's a painful story. That's the thing. Like a lot of
Hmm.
this show is painful, but you go through the pain because you love these characters so much,
Hmm.
and because it does give you bright moments where you know but then you're going through the pain again, and
Yeah,
so
I mean, but Frank, poor old Frank. I mean, he is probably the character who had it the most unfair, who had the most
yeah,
unfair outcome of the whole thing because, well, he lost his wife. I mean, she basically, I mean, every evidence pointed out to she just abandoning him,
yeah,
running
it
off.
just everybody's like, you know admit it, dude, your wife ran off
Hmm.
with some other guy, you need to move on, and he didn't. Like it, what I love so much, and by the way, I have to say that I can't think of many shows who that have had such a like amazing like 3 episode run as season 1 has
Hmm.
uh with the Garrison Commander, the wedding, and both sides now. Both sides now is the mid-season finale, and like
Hmm.
this is a guy who believes in his wife and loves his wife so much that when he's told by the Reverend's housekeeper, I think that you know that Claire may have traveled through time, at these standing stones, which sounds ridiculous.
Hmm.
Um, and he brushes it off at first, but then he's driving by the stones, stops his car, and then just in desperation just walks up to the stones yelling out Claire's name. And so this is a guy who loved his wife so much, and then when she does eventually return temporarily anyway, um it, she tells him what happened, and he's like, I believe you. I mean, he's having to take a lot on faith with that. And so, yeah, his story ends so tragically, and,
Hmm.
not a character without his flaws. Um,
I heard
eh,
that. Well, I haven't read the novels, but what I've heard about the novels is that the novel Frank is a little bit more douchey.
yeah, which I am eternally grateful then to. I haven't gotten to read the novels yet.
Hmm.
Still, they're sitting on my shelf. But if that being what I've heard, I'm eternally grateful to the creators of the show that they casted Tobias Menzies and wrote Frank the way they did, because I
Hmm.
love him so much.
Yeah.
And I hate the idea of getting to the books and discovering that I don't like him that much. But I will hold
Yeah.
on to my TV version of Frank.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, the whole thing with Brianna and him deciding to actually raise her as his own daughter, that was pretty big of him. I mean, of course, anyone who is a step parent, especially a step dad, um, will know that it is not really that hard to love a child that is not yours if you love your partner, right? But the circumstances on which he decided to raise her are what makes him more lovable.
Yeah,
Because I mean, he basically chose to raise the her wife's cheat cheat daughter, right? And that's not
yeah,
an
and
easy decision to make. Hmm.
one of the most like heartbreaking moments is at the end of one of the season 3 episodes, when Brianna is born, and uh, like there's this moment where you think actually Frank and Claire are going to work things out.
Mhm.
And then the
The
nurse
nurse. Oh man, yeah.
says, oh look, his hair's so red. It's like at that point you're like, nope, this isn't gonna
You're
work.
like, shut up, lady, shut up. You didn't have to mention that. Okay, but yeah, yeah. Uh, but the saddest moment was when they finally decided to get intimate, and she kept closing her eyes and pictured Jamie,
Oh
and he
god.
oh,
Yeah.
and he realized that, and he was like, you know what, this isn't gonna work. Maybe just we would just. I'm not going to do this anymore, but we will stay together just because of Brianna and whatever, right? But and also because of that, at that time, getting a divorce was not super, I mean, accepted in society. So, and that's
Yeah.
another interesting thing that I liked about the show when Claire went back to the 19 um 3 years later after she left. It was still the 40s. Yes, it was still the 40s, then
Yeah, and then at some point it's the 60s.
yes, at
Um,
some point in the 60s, and they show you when she was studying medicine and medical school. I mean, and she ran into pretty much the same issues that she had when she was in the 1740s. Uh, Sexism, and she was still looked down because she was a woman in medical school, and her only ally was the only person of color in the place. And they started they developed this friendship and this alliance
yeah.
that, I mean, that was beautiful to watch. But the interesting part is that she found out that the world hadn't changed that much.
Yeah,
Hmm.
there's this great moment. I don't remember. It's been a while since I watched season 3, but um, I think there's a point where maybe it's one of the professors or something says something to her, and I remember that Katrina Balfe, the actress who plays Claire, said that you know I in her performing the scene, she's like, when the professor is saying whatever it is he says to her, she's like, that's the moment Claire decides to be a doctor. It's like
Hmm.
to show up those closed-minded idiots.
Hmm. Yeah. The show has a lot of those moments. I mean, it's filled with them. And even with much later in the story with Brianna, she also experiences those cringe moments herself. And some of those cringe moments were pretty super awful moments, but some others were like just plain, I don't know how to call them. I mean,
Yeah,
her
it's I
whole.
have to I have to remind myself that I really love Roger now, and I have
Mhm.
since he
Yeah.
came on, but he did have some moments where you're like, dude,
Hmm.
no, no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
um
yeah. I mean, of course, the whole moment where she was forced to that horrible thing, that was horrible in itself. But the thing that she experienced with men that cared for her, that actually loved her, and that you still see this struggle and this cringy moments, especially with Roger in the beginning of the relationship when um they meet again after a long time.
yeah.
Uh
Well,
gosh.
because he's still like, and we talk about their stuff taking place in the present. It's
Hmm.
still the 1960s. Like
Hmm.
that's that's
Yeah.
the time that he's from. So it's like, yeah, more progressive compared to you know, the
Yes, but
1700s, but
yeah, but if you truly want to know how things were for females in pop culture, and I mean in a pop culture scenario, I think that one of the most realistic portrayals is Mad Men.
mhm.
Yeah, women were still objectified and sexualized and pretty much valued for how great they were in bed and that sort of stuff. And you see on that show, you see women trying to fight um, those circumstances and truly prove themselves worthy of any
Yeah, I love
privileges that.
watch
Mhm,
I love watching the sort of overall arc of that show.
mhm,
How things are, when the show opens, so horrible, with the
mhm,
way women are treated, and the show doesn't exactly end in modern times, but you do see a cultural shift,
mhm,
and it's sort of remarkable to compare, you know society at the end of that show versus the start of it.
mhm. Yeah, but I mean the thing is that was the time that they were at,
Yeah.
and those were the values at that time, and they were still horrible. I mean, today sometimes it's too horrible, but we have advanced. We are
Yeah,
still.
I think I said a few minutes ago, it's not modern times, as though in
Mhm,
modern times we're doing so well.
mhm,
Um, we certainly have our ups and downs,
mhm, mhm.
but yeah, and yeah, I think people are doing it. Like we've been talking about Frank, and then we moved on to uh, Brianna and Roger. People are going to get upset if we stay away from Jamie for too long. Um,
Um, no, but I
uh,
mean, I mean, Claire did well. I mean, she landed on a soft spot, and even though she had some issues with Frank, I mean, she had a great life in the
yeah,
60s.
that's what well, and
Well, I mean, 40s, 50s, 60s.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's what I love about the opening of the show is
Hmm.
that no, they don't have the insane chemistry of that Claire and Jamie have,
Hmm.
but they are happy, and they've been away from each other for 5 years because of the war, and
Hmm.
they're rediscovering and reconnecting with each other,
Hmm.
and they seem to be on a good path to
Yeah,
that, to where you can see them being happy together, um, but not meant to be.
yeah. And okay, moving on to Jamie. Well, like I said, Claire had a good life back in her time, but Jamie did not do so well.
No, he had a
Jamie.
very rough going of it.
Hmm.
Now we can get into the nitty gritty because we're an hour in, so we don't have to hold anything back. He's because they're split apart after the Battle of Culloden,
Hmm.
so
Which
he's
happens in season two. We didn't really talk about season two, but in short,
season two. There's a
uh,
lot of wonderful stuff in France, which I adore. One of the things that I love most about the show is that, and who was it on Twitter? Was it Michelle who we were talking to
mhm,
before? She's going to
mhm,
get on my case about this because she said she thought the show got repetitive. One of the things that I love about the show actually is that it always seems to be moving to a new place.
mhm,
So I actually don't feel it's repetitive in that way because like season one it's all grounded in Scotland, and it's about the characters falling in love, and then all of the big stuff with Blackjack Randall,
mhm,
and season two we're off to France and Bonnie Prince Charlie and all that stuff. Then later in the show we end up in America and stuff, but I love the season two stuff because it's even the opening titles are have
mhm,
lyrics sung in French. Again, Barry McCreary is a genius, people.
mhm,
Um, So it's got such a different flavor to what happened in season one, at least for the first half of the season. Then they go back to
Hmm.
Scotland, which is great because Scotland is awesome. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, in short, the plot of the second season is trying to convince the Jacobite king to avoid the war.
and Bonnie
Only,
Prince Charlie is such a disaster.
yeah, only to fail miserably, and well, eventually, that's what. Well, in order to for Jamie to save Claire, he takes her to the stones, and he essentially just
Oh,
um
just tears
yeah,
flooding down my face. It
yeah,
got
he makes that sacrifice, and
and that whole scene though, where they're both holding on to each other, and I think one of the bits of dialogue, Jamie's talking about, if he goes up before God, he'll say, Lord, you gave me a rare woman and I loved her well. I'm like, oh
mhm,
God, just beautiful.
mhm,
And she's like, you could come with me. And then he puts his hand on the stone, nothing happens. And he's like, no, it's
yeah,
I don't think it's gonna work. It's a heartbreaking scene, and it's juxtaposed against all the scenes from the 60s, um, after Claire has
mhm,
been back for 20 years, and it's intercut. So like the whole season, it's leading up to their separation because you get that from the opening scene of season two.
mhm,
And so the whole season is like, we know nothing's going to go the way they want to.
yeah.
It's just like this slide downhill. And
Yeah, I mean, and they are trying to mess up with time, starting for
yeah,
that point. I mean, if you have long watched shows about time traveling, you know that you can mess with time. I mean, there are some stories where you modify the future and everything changes in the same environment, like in Back to the Future. But in other stories, you change something and you completely change the timeline in the future. And in some other stories, like in Dark, you just can't alter the future. I mean, even no matter how much you try, everything is going to eventually evolve the way it was supposed to
this
evolve.
show feels kind of ambiguous in that,
Hmm.
are they not able to change things because things are set and
Hmm.
you can't change the future? Or do they try to change things and they just fail?
Hmm.
Um, because you don't have like somebody at the start of the story saying this is the set series of events, and like they discover things over the course of the show, like
Hmm.
that they're in historical records,
Hmm.
in the 60s and stuff like that. But was that always the case? We
Hmm.
don't quite know. Or did that happen because of what they did in the past? So it's open to interpretation. But the sad thing
Yeah.
is that regardless of, you know, what your take on it is, they don't succeed in in changing the course of history at the Battle of Culloden.
Yeah.
Um, and it's this gut wrenching because at the end of season one, that's they say we're going to do this, we're going to change the future, and then the opening scene of season two is her arriving back in the 40s and
Hmm.
finding out that they failed.
Yeah.
And then you have to go through the entire season basically watching the story of how they failed, and
Uh-huh.
it's horrible.
It is. And I mean, one of the things that I would love for them to, I mean, well, I mean, it's part of the charm, maybe, but I would love to see how the time traveling thing actually works. Because to me, in this show, the time traveling thing feels like fantasy instead of
Mm,
feeling like it traditionally. Well, traditionally, time traveling stories are usually, sci-fi, and the difference between sci-fi and fantasy is often the how. If the how is explained, then it's sci-fi. And if the how is not explained, it's just magic and it's fantasy.
Well, that's
And
funny
this,
because I actually prefer it the way that they do it because I don't feel like, even though obviously a lot of the story has to do with the fact that Claire
yeah,
has
I mean,
knowledge of the
and the
future.
whole focus is this romance. It's not the time traveling thing.
Yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
primarily a historical romance, not a science fiction story.
Hmm.
It has those elements, but that's not the focal point of the story. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm okay with it.
Yeah, me too. But I mean, I'm a nerd. I tend to ask those questions. So yeah, it's inevitable to ask those questions, especially if you're a sucker for time travel stories like I am. But yes, I mean, and it's not necessary to the story to develop, but it would be a nice to have.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. I don't really miss it, but it's like one of those things that you don't know you need until you someone points it out. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah. And
I feel like but also that's a trap too, because if you're telling a more sort of fantastical story and then you begin to pull back the layers and try to explain the hows of things,
mhm.
of like how things work, that usually will lead to disappointment for the audience because it'll be like, and I think they ran into that problem a lot with Lost, where it was very fantasy driven, and then as their explanations later on were, the explanations that they gave anyway were, sort of, they certainly weren't well received by the audience. And
Mhm.
I think the thing was that so much of the story was fantasy driven that it wasn't, once you start trying to deliver details, it's kind of, it doesn't always work. And I feel like that would kind of be a similar thing with this show. The
Mm.
time travel is kind of unexplained. You touch the stone and you travel back in time. It's
Yeah, but what I've liked is that they eventually did explain a little bit about it. I mean, and it's not how the stones exactly work, but the how you get to travel.
mm,
And well, it's basically something genetic. You either get to hear the buzz of the stones or you don't. And the well, I didn't quite catch that when Roger traveled, and I was like, why was he able to travel? And then when they what I think it was a scene with um Rihanna's son, that he touched a stone, a magical stone, and he thought it was too hot, and everyone touched it, and then it was, oh yes, it's very hot, and then Jamie touched it, and then it was like, no, it's not. And it's one of the things that you actually realize how
well,
time travel was.
it certainly does seem to be connected to uh sort of, I
Well,
don't want, I like, maybe bloodlines or family connection, because Roger is a Mackenzie. So
yes,
so there is
and
that.
then he's not just any Mackenzie. He is a descent of this crazy woman. What was her name?
Gillis
Gillis. Yes,
and Dougal.
yes, and I mean, she was his ancestor, so that's why he was able to travel in time. But they don't really explain that until you actually put a little thought on it. And I think, and oh, no, I think Claire did explain it later, but it was like just one comment that it was easily missed.
Yeah, again, it's one of
Hmm.
those things that, like, I'm so wrapped up in the drama of all the other stuff going on that I don't think I care about it like in the moment, but if they want to explain along the way, like,
Hmm.
that'll help at the end of the story be like, see, that's how.
Hmm. Yeah, and we haven't talked about season three Gallus, and because she is
Oh, bathing in blood.
Yeah, I mean, she is the pathway for the audience to know how actually it works.
Oh yeah, well, we haven't really said that. Oh yeah, by the way, Dale is also a time traveler.
Yeah, she's also a time traveler, and she is from the 60s as well.
Yeah,
She was one activist of the Scottish independence thing, and in her will, or in her desire to achieve that independence, she decides to travel back in time at the Jacobite conflict time, so she can alter time and, you know, achieve the independence for the Scottish. But she also um, crashes and burns.
yeah. She's.
And
This is when the story got pretty wild.
uh-huh.
I was like, we're, and that's why actually I say like season 4 is probably like my least favorite season, but I'm also not super crazy about some elements of the end of season 3
Hmm.
because the storytelling is so out there.
Hmm.
Whereas the rest of the show seems so focused on like historical events and Jamie and Claire's love story, and like the character drama. And then the end of season 3 goes really deep into like prophecy uh and like trying to like change the past and like, you know, this child must be killed so that this happens. And
Hmm.
um but that said, it's also ridiculously fun, mostly because of Dale just like is really entertaining to watch as she's, you know, doing all this crazy stuff. But
Hmm. Yeah, well, she was in the belief that she had to have a blood sacrifice in order to be able to travel. I
yeah.
mean, you have to reunite a few. I mean, few requirements in order to travel. Is first of all, you need to be able to hear the buzz of the stones. You need to have a precious stone, such as a diamond, a ruby, whatever. And well, she was on the understanding that you also have to have a blood sacrifice, or
Which
blood must be involved in the
she was a little too
situation.
willing to go all in on that part. She
Yeah,
was
she was a little sadistic, yes. Uh-huh.
she was like, well, I've got this worthless, you know, husband.
Yeah,
So yeah, sure, blood sacrifice sounds
yeah,
good.
yeah. And then later, poor Ian was just
Oh my god,
so
Ian.
close to death in the hands of a crazy lady. So, yeah. And but yeah, I mean,
which which by the way, that was really uncomfortable to watch just because just before this show, the actor who played Ian had been in the Hobbit films as Bard's son, and he was so young in that. And so I'm seeing like that scene in this show where, you know, she's, you know, taking advantage of him, and it's like, no, leave him alone. Oh, you're on
y-
mute. Sorry.
yeah. Sorry, I had to mute the. Yeah. I mean, the whole show has some very awkward moments, especially. I mean, the cherry on top of the cake probably are season one's finale.
Yeah, which
And
that's a tough one.
mhm,
Um,
and
I appreciated what they were like doing, the fact that they didn't want to sugarcoat that and to like um actually, because this was also during the whole controversy of the way that Game of Thrones had handled a scene of rape. And
Sansa. Uh-huh.
yeah, and so, and then at the end of season 1 you have Jamie as the one who's going through that at the hands of blackjack,
Mm-hmm.
and so they really wanted to show like play fair with the trauma of what he's going through and the after effects of that, and not just like brush over. That said,
Mm-hmm.
it's an extremely painful couple of episodes to sit
Yes.
through. um and I remember just because like I had been told ahead of time like the end of this season is going to be rough.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got through the penultimate episode, which I thought was pretty brutal, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, that's got to be it, right? And then no, it hits you with flashbacks throughout the course of the season finale,
Mm-hmm.
going back, and it's even worse. And so like I admire like that they did that for a purpose,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But that's, like I said, it doesn't make it any easier to sit through. And so I think anytime I recommend the show, the asterisk is always
Yeah,
the
you have
end of
to give an
season one is
explainer. Yeah, you have to
gonna
give
be
an
really
explainer.
brutal.
And it's not only for Jamie's situation, but also but for Brianna,
Yes,
for Fergus, for for
for
Claire,
Claire.
for
Um,
Claire. That whole scene
I
with Claire was awful to watch. And
when I got to
yeah.
the end of season 5, like that was, I immediately compared it to the end of season 1,
Mm-hmm.
where I was like, I was not prepared for it um,
Mm-hmm.
because I just felt like I had become accustomed to what the show was, um, and the sort of drama, that I was sort of used to with, with the story. And then that finale comes and hits you like a ton of bricks.
Mm-hmm.
And and then the way it's cut together with Claire's sort of mental, like the way she deals with it. And so
Mm-hmm.
she's imagining like all her loved ones in the 60s and stuff. It's beautifully done, but it is horrific to watch. um and so yeah, um a breathtakingly, amazingly well crafted episode, but not easy.
Yeah, and then this is precisely for the reason that many people complain about the show, that it abuses of that circumstance. But if you really look back on history and the way that things were handled in the past, you know that that's a pretty realistic outcome. I mean, it's not, obviously it's not great to watch, and it's
i
awkward, and it's
I think it does. This sounds horrible to say, but like I do think I get the argument that, well, there's a lot of horrible stuff in history. Why do you have to
mhm,
highlight sexual assault?
mhm,
But I do think, in terms of this story, it's
mhm.
important because Claire is a woman out of time, and she's
Yes,
doing things in this time that are not acceptable by the standards of many people in that time. So she
yes,
is in a position where these types of things are a risk for her, and so I think that's why those things are showcased.
yes,
I know
and
you can ask Diana Gabaldon, you know why this is the story she chose to tell, but it is, that's what it is. And so, like, I get it, and those are, even though I think they're very well done,
mhm,
they're definitely my least favorite parts of the show.
definitely yes.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think it's important in this story. I think it's executed well, but it is the disclaimer that I give to everybody that there's going to be some difficult moments.
Yes, and adding up to what you said about uh, why in this particular story those type of situations are portrayed and why they don't feel like, I don't know, unjustifiable, if that is the right word to use. Uh, well, we have to remember that one of the things why men do that is for power.
Hmm.
And at that time, and today, even today, a man doing that to a woman is a power statement, especially if this is a woman that gets out of the standard, of the expected standard. If she is rebellious according to the values of the time, or just plain, I don't know, misogyny. So yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and Aaron says it never shies away from how it affects the person who was assaulted. That's the thing. Like, happens at the end of season 1 to Jamie, and like his, so much of his story in season 2 is about him recovering from that, and like the trauma that he undergoes, and then you know it's the same with Brianna and Claire, especially like Claire in season 6 is the fallout from that, and and how she's dealing with that, and how she starts to unfortunately unravel
Mhm.
throughout the course of the season, to the point where I think it's horrific when she starts to, like, her inner voice starts to manifest as her abuser,
Yes.
and that's horrifying.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I think that if that's the story being told, I can't imagine it being done in a sort. I don't want to say can't be done in a better way. That just sounds like, but you know what I mean. It's
Mhm.
like at least they're actually dealing with the trauma that comes from that.
Yes, and that's precisely what Erin says here, and I think this is a very accurate comment. She says, "I think one of the main differences is that this show doesn't perpetuate sexual violence only to like motivate men. It never shies away from how it affects the person who was assaulted." And yes, we see the aftermaths of Jamie, Brianna, and Claire's trauma,
Yeah,
and it's painful to watch. It's just as painful as the scene itself, and see how they overcame the trauma. Well, obviously the trauma is always going to be there, but you learn how to cope with it. And I found one of my favorite seasons, one of my favorite scenes between Brianna and Jamie was when they talk about it. When they talk about it, their own relatable trauma,
yeah,
and Jamie gives her some advice, and I mean it was a
and
bittersweet moment. Uh-huh.
I do like the fact that, and it calls back to his trauma and how she was there to guide him through that darkness, and
Hmm.
that then he's there to help her through it, in this moment. And um unfortunately that moment, like, it's a nice moment that is quickly disturbed by by all the stuff that happens in the
Hmm.
finale. Um but yeah, so yeah, I say like that stuff is painful to sit through, but it should be painful to sit through.
Yes.
If that's the story that we're watching, then you know and that's I appreciate that they're making it, us feel the horror of it, as much as I don't enjoy experiencing the horror.
Yeah, but well, I'm obviously I don't enjoy watching those scenes, but I do like the way they handled it,
Hmm.
that particular horrible situation. And I think that's one of the highlights of the show. I mean, it's as well one of the most criticized things about the show, but I mean, you have
And
to.
it's fair because
Mhm,
you shouldn't watch something that you don't enjoy watching.
mhm,
It's if there's content in the show that is not the kind of thing you want to spend your time,
mhm.
invested in, then by all means, you
Yes.
know, watch don't watch it, move on to something else. But despite the inclusion of those elements, the rest of the show for me is just like so rewarding
Mhm.
in its beauty and the way the characters interact, that I'm willing to go through that pain and suffering
Yeah.
to be there with the characters through all the good moments.
Yes. Yes. I totally agree. And well, moving on into season. Well, we discussed a little bit of season three. We we focused mainly on the.
I do want to say, like, the moment that just popped in my head, which I love,
Mhm.
is when they're reunited in the print shop, and then they've got this wonderfully tender moment, and then the character Jordy comes and he's like, "Good Lord," like. eh, it's not enough that, and then he says something about the religion, but now you have to be having orgies and
Yeah.
so great. And that's the thing. That's what I'm saying. Like, you've got these wonderful moments of comedy,
Mhm.
juxtaposed against, because the moment before that, your heart is soaring, because Jamie and Claire have been reunited,
Mhm.
and I love the fact that she comes in and he's like, "You back already, Jordy?" And then he hears her voice, and he says, "It isn't Jordy, it's me, Claire."
Mhm.
And then, you know, he's so nervous to turn around because he doesn't like,
Yeah. I
part of
mean.
it. He can't believe it. And then he sees her and he immediately faints. I love that. It's great.
No, but the aftermath of that moment also was filled with great moments. I mean, that when they start telling each other their stories and how they handled the being apart situation and how they had to move on with their lives, and they actually had to get involved with other people, all of those things. And when one particularly adorable moment was when Claire shows Jamie pictures of Rihanna,
Oh
and
my
then
God. The
yeah,
scandal.
yeah, the scandal of the
It's
bikini
like,
picture.
and I do have to say, it's like, Claire, what were you thinking? Maybe bring some pictures where she's fully clothed.
Yes. Uh, Once again,
But
is that is a very Claire move.
yeah, again, it's what we were saying earlier, is like she just assumes that, you know, that she can strong arm everybody in the past into just having, you know, a 20th century attitude. And it's like, Claire, you knew where you were going this time around.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have been shocked at that reaction.
Yeah, I mean, she prepared with antibiotics and needles and that kind of stuff, but she didn't, I mean, put her mind into the into the 1700s. And yeah, that's a very clear move. But it was an adorable moment. I mean, it was
Yeah.
hilarious. And yeah, I mean, after that, you once again see them go through hell with other people. I mean, you get the Laurie situation, and then
Oh,
you.
should we spend a minute talking about how much, like, you just want to strangle throughout this entire, every time she pops up, it's like, oh God.
And I mean, okay, I get it. I get the thing about the son that he had with this other woman. I get it. But Leary, I mean, and that's exactly the reaction that Claire
Yeah,
has.
and it's like, and I do start off like at the beginning of the show. I have sympathy for Leary at first. Of
Mhm.
course, then she does the whole thing with, the witch trial and all that stuff, and then it's like, okay, no, putting you in the I hate you column now. um, and then like, but it's like, really, Jamie, you
Mhm.
married Leary?
Oh
I don't
yeah.
care what the circumstances were or what your intentions were. It's like, no.
You do it. I mean,
But
of all women, in Scotland,
yeah,
you had to pick Leary.
but we do get Marsali out of
Oh yeah,
that
yeah. I mean,
story,
Marcely is
which
the bright side of this. But then, of course, she hates Claire at the beginning because, of course, she has the influence of her mom.
yeah.
And then Brianna gets a little bit of Leary in her in her path, and that was also like uh, cringy too because I mean, yeah, I mean she was like a great aid for her at the beginning, but once she knew she was Claire's daughter, that was it. She lost it, and then yeah, it was I don't
And
know,
then,
Leary,
and then to cap things off, she shoots Jamie's.
and then they have to leave.
Yeah.
They have to leave Scotland once again, and they head into the Americas. And the whole Caribbean thing wasn't really my favorite.
I liked it just because, again, it was changing things up. I like that
Mhm,
the show is always on the move doing things. And there is stuff that I enjoy. I think there's a scene where they both like either get, I don't remember if it's that they get really drunk or they get really high, and
mm,
there's and it's a lovemaking scene where you know they're just acting all goofy on the ship,
mhm,
and that was funny. And but yeah, like I said, that story gets pretty crazy by the end of that season, so I'm
mhm,
kind of mixed on it overall. Um but it's like I said before, I genuinely do love all of this show. So even the
mhm,
stuff that I'm a little less crazy about, like I was still glued to my seat each week,
mhm.
watching it. Oh, what we haven't talked about season 3 wise is the character of Lord John, who I adore.
Oh
Um,
yes.
and of course,
Mhm,
he's also in love with Jamie,
mhm.
as you do.
Of course.
Yeah.
Can you blame
Uh,
him?
um, and
Uh-huh.
they meet through he gets put in charge of what's the prison? I don't remember the name of the prison, but it's where
I don't know. Mhm,
Jamie gets sent after Culloden, and so they establish their relationship there. And it's not what Lord John would want it to be. It's not a romantic relationship,
yeah.
but their friendship is so solid and beautiful. Uh, and there is a story in season 3 where Jamie fathers a son,
Mhm,
and Lord John ends up you know, raising that boy, and that's a beautiful story. And it's always a bright spot when he shows up,
oh yeah,
in the
it's
show.
always adorable. I mean, one of the moments that I loved him the most was when he showed up to that Brianna in, social introduction to society party. When the Aunt Jocasta was trying to get her married to any guy, basically any guy who would want her, even though she was pregnant, just in order to save her honor. And you had a range of peculiar characters, to say it nicely.
Oh my god, and they made me hate Billy Boyd, which is saying something because
Mhm.
Billy Boyd, our dear Pippin, played a role in this show, and he was not a good person.
No, and yeah, I mean, it was like a collection of horrible, lame, pathetic men, because that was all of the options that she would aspire to. I mean, at the time, being pregnant. But then Lord Young comes up, and I love the reaction of every man in the room. Like he was like, "Oh gosh,
Oh, great!
my
It's
chancellor
all the
Boyd."
it's like all the people sitting in the room at an like audition for a role, and then
Uh-huh.
the handsome guy walks in, and you're like, shoot.
Okay, I guess I could just go away. I could just leave the room, and no one might notice. Then yeah.
And then
Uh,
she's like, yeah, him to
mhm.
buy herself some time until she can get Roger back.
Yes, and what I loved about it is that John really translate his love for Jamie into Brianna.
Hmm.
I mean, it of no, of course not in a sexual way, but in a caring,
Yeah,
loving way, affectionate way, and he is willing to do her that favor. And I love that they got along so well. They became really great friends.
yeah. I mean, like,
I mean,
uh,
to the point that I dare say that he would have made a much better husband to her than Roger if he had been straight,
yeah.
right?
And
Mm-hmm.
the thing, the thing about him, like, the reason why he's such a great character is like he is just so honorable to his core in the best possible way, and
Mm-hmm.
he's so courteous and polite and well-meaning. He's like,
And handsome.
he- yeah, he's like, the
Uh-huh.
world's best uncle or something.
Yes.
Just like,
Uh-huh.
he's the guy you can always count on, even if
Mm-hmm.
his heart is breaking on the inside.
Yeah, I
um
know.
yeah, he's great. And I mean, because I think, doesn't he have like some spin-off stories or something in the books? I think
Yeah.
I think she's written some stories that are just about him. So I'm interested once I finally get to the books to read some of that.
Yeah. I have a long list of books to read that I just can't get to.
Yeah, well, I said on last week's Here Be Dragons that I hadn't like my room is still a disaster because I came home from my vacation with so many new books and comics, which is why you are not seeing the rest of the room. So, like, I have
Don't worry.
mountains.
Right in front of me, I have my kitchen, and you don't know what state it is on. I mean, you don't
So
want to know.
I have mountains of books, and
Mhm,
the Outlander novels are part of that.
mhm.
But yeah, at some point we'll get to them. Um,
Yeah, I hope to too. But okay, so mainly season 4 is also not my favorite, not one of my favorites, mainly because it was the whole thing with the guy that assaulted Brianna was a little
Stephen
annoying.
Bonnet.
Yeah, Stephen Moffat. I mean, I like the character.
here's here's what I think he's a good character, and I think he was amazingly well portrayed by the actor.
Yes,
Um,
I mean, he
but
was probably the highlight of the
here's the
season.
here's the problem.
Uh-huh.
This show never got better villain wise than Blackjack Randall.
Oh yeah.
And that's not the fault of any of the other actors who came into play later
Mhm,
villains. Like, it's just Tobias Menzies brought it with that character, and the
mhm,
character was so brilliantly written. Like, for people who haven't seen this show yet, just wait till you get to the Garrison Commander
mhm.
episode. and it's just basically an entire episode of like Claire and Blackjack just sitting down talking with each other, and
Oh, that was very
Blackjack
intense. Yes.
gives like the most haunting, disturbing monologue you've ever seen.
Hmm.
And and so it was always going to be a hard thing to top that. And
Yeah.
so it's not the later actors' faults. And I do think that Stephen Bonner is a really good character.
Yes, it
um
was, and I dare to say that he was the highlight of the fourth season,
hmm,
just because he was a charismatic villain. I mean, he did horrible, horrible things, but he had something.
and you want
This.
to actually think
Mhm.
that, and you kind of even really respond to him when we initially meet the character, and he's talking with Claire about his fear of drowning. uh,
Mhm.
but and so there's something very compelling about the character, and even later on the episode where he's kidnapped Brianna, and
Oh yeah.
like there's so many great things in that episode. Like, this is a character who's really messed up.
Mhm.
And so he's very compelling. He's a horrible person, horrible, horrible, horrible.
Yeah, but
um
he doesn't know that he's horrible. I mean, the great thing about this villain is that this villain is not conscious of his evilness. He's genuinely trying to do the right thing in her own twisted mind. But obviously his values are not
yeah,
aligned to the moral standards, right? To the moral standards of any time, not just the 1700s or the 1900s or today, even today. But he's not aware of that. He actually thinks he's a good person. And that's
yeah.
the craziest thing about it, because Jack Black Randall, he was, I
He's
mean,
aware of the fact, like,
yeah.
yeah, again, the episode that I referenced, he's like fully acknowledges that he does not like the person he sees in his reflection.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's actually, I think he's disgusted by himself. But
Mm-hmm.
but then he turns around and he says, "Darkness is where I dwell."
Mm-hmm.
And so he recognizes exactly what he is, but he has no intention whatsoever of changing.
Mm-hmm.
um so like, yeah, I mean, brilliant character, but absolutely despicable in every conceivable way,
Mm-hmm.
but endlessly fascinating because again he recognizes how horrible he is.
Oh yeah,
And
he's fully aware of his actions.
like even the end of season 2, when the whole thing comes up with him, is he gonna marry, um
Oh, his
the girl, where he even says to
sister-in-law.
yeah, and he says to Claire, what awaits that girl if I marry her, so like he's trying to get out of it because he knows that he can't possibly help himself from being a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And
But that's probably the one and only selfless thing he did.
yeah, it's
And mhm.
yeah, that's him at his best.
Yes. Yikes.
Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, yes, he was unarguably the best villain of the whole series.
yeah,
Because moving on into season 5 and season 6, the villains that we got in season 5 and season 6 are not as great, but not because they were terrible, but because the thing about them they're getting into trouble again and again and again and again. I mean, Claire and Jamie getting into trouble with people again and again and again and again. That's why I know why Michelle on Twitter said that it was repetitive.
Mm.
I agree with her on that, but I mean, season 5 had this. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it's basically Claire getting in trouble once again because people think that she's a witch. And
Hmm.
stepping out of the norm,
I
the
think what
gender
made it
norm.
I think what made
Mhm,
it different for me is that she
mhm,
seemed to be getting away with doing a lot, and that
mhm.
the end was sort of reality trying to smacking back and saying, no, you're in an extraordinarily dangerous time. And yeah,
Yes, because she
and
got sorry that I interrupt,
no,
but
no, go ahead.
she sort of got comfortable with the idea that they were making their own home and their own rules.
Yeah,
But they weren't really doing that. I mean, they were still in the jurisdiction of the British Empire, and the people around still had their own ideas of the time. And there was ignorance, and there was, all sort of situations that led to her crashing into reality, like you said.
yeah, and also I think like, and the story does distract you as well with like the main thrust of the narrative for season
Hmm.
5 is all about um the British and the regulators, and
Hmm.
Jamie kind of not wanting to go after um Murtaugh. And oh, by
Hmm.
the way, Murtaugh, who's like,
Oh,
we
we
haven't
haven't
even mentioned,
mentioned
like,
him.
oh my
Hmm.
god, it's such a magnificent character who is Jamie's basically his father figure,
Hmm.
who I believe his role is greatly expanded from the novels. I
Hmm.
think in the novels he doesn't survive past Culloden, and in the show they carry him forward um, a lot. But so the story with that, and then there's also stuff with Roger, where he has a near death experience. So I think like all that stuff, you get caught up in all that stuff,
Hmm.
and you aren't expecting that turn with Claire at the end. And I love like, and now I'm remembering the stuff from season 5, because there's a lot of stuff from season 5 that I think is just spectacular.
Hmm.
All the stuff with the fiery cross, and the way that Jamie
Hmm.
has the settlers swear an oath of loyalty to him, which brings you right back to season 1 and Castle
Hmm.
Leoch and all that stuff. And then when Claire is taken at the end of the season, that's when he lights the cross, and they all go after to rescue her. And so yeah, all that stuff I just love. And um yeah, I don't know, it's like I can understand that criticism, but it just, the ending was such a shock to me, because I think I was distracted by other stuff in the
Hmm.
story. And I found, and no, they don't have villains in the same way. The de facto villain of season 5 is still Stephen Bonnet,
Hmm.
and that again I think is another distraction from the fact that you have the brothers. I don't remember
The name, yeah.
their names,
Yeah, me neither.
but and then the one who is even worse than you know and then the actually I do want to look up the names, because the actor who plays the brother who stays alive throughout season 6,
Hmm.
um let me
The Browns?
yeah, the Browns.
The Browns,
uh
yes.
yeah, so all right, here, all right, so the character of Richard Brown, who's the
Hmm.
one who is still alive in season 6, he's played
Hmm.
by Chris Larkin. I actually really like that actor, because he did a guest spot in a show that I watched growing up called Highlander. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and he was also in Master and Commander of the Far Side of the World. So I recognized
Hmm.
him. And he's so like, you just hate him, in this. And like, because on the one hand, he's like, you did what you had to do by killing my brother because of the horrible thing he did, but he was still my brother, so I'm going to hold it against you. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think he plays the part really well. And his brother, the one who actually kidnaps and assaults Claire, Lionel,
Mm-hmm.
is just like the most, like, he makes your skin crawl just looking at
Mm-hmm.
him and hearing him talk. So I think that the performances are great. I don't think they're meant to be held up against the likes of, like Blackjack
Mm-hmm.
or even Stephen Bonnet as those types of, like, quote unquote villains. They're these guys that kind of sneak up on you as obstacles for Claire and Jamie,
Mm-hmm.
and for Lionel to be, um, absolutely horrific in the actions that he takes. And I love the fact, again, that as horrible as it is, the fact that he becomes the representation of, like, Claire's guilt in
Mm-hmm.
season 6. So it's
Yeah.
really disturbing in that way. Um, uh, and anyway, as far as season 6 goes, we haven't talked about the Christies.
Oh God.
So we got to fit them in. Like, they're all like, and again, I started off the season having sympathy for Malva,
No,
just
I
because
didn't. No, I
just
saw her and
because
then
she
sorry. I
has
mean,
such a horrible father. So at first
mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, I get it. And I was like, and when he couldn't actually, handle the belt, and she was just looking at him, I was like, yeah, you go, girl. um, but then, like, as the season crept on, I'm like, okay, no, she's one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Yeah. I mean, if you haven't watched How I Met Your Mother, well, if you have, you would be familiar with the concept of crazy eyes. She does have the crazy eyes, and I mean, the moment you look at her, you know that she's up to something. I mean, she is, of course, with this facade of being an adorable, innocent little girl that is a victim of the abuses of her father, which is true, which
Yeah.
is true, and it's horrible. But then again, she's a horrible person. Uh, and the damage that she caused is
Which
brutal.
I'm very interested, like, not interested in the sense that I want to go online and look it up, because that will only, I found that looking for discourse will only bring suffering to me.
Mhm,
But I imagine that this was a very complicated storyline to digest,
mhm.
in 2022. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So, um, obviously we're referencing that Malva ends up um, accusing uh, Jamie of, um, having sex with her and fathering,
Mhm,
a child, which in the actual story is false.
mhm.
Um, but that just seems like, if it was, if this wasn't based off of a book series, that seems like the last storyline anyone would choose to tell
Yeah.
in a show, um, right now. So
Yeah. I mean, my complaint with the season 6 is that it moved incredibly slow. It was the whole Malva, the whole Christie situation should have been like at least at the most 5 episodes long. I mean, I
oh,
didn't like the fact that they left the resolution of this issue for the next season. I didn't like that. I mean, it was I felt that they lost a lot of time on the setup of this issue of this problem and too little time on the consequences of the whole thing.
it could be that my interpretation of this is slanted by the fact that I got to binge this season, because I didn't start watching until the season was over, just because
Mm.
um, some of you may know, there was a lot of crappy stuff going on in my life over
Mhm.
the past few months.
Yeah.
So I actually held off on watching until I went on vacation and watched it with
Mhm.
my godmother, Mary Ann, and had a wonderful time. So the season just flew by for me. Um,
Oh, that may be the reason why we feel differently about it,
yeah,
because I did watch it episode by episode weekly,
yeah.
and there were weeks that there was even a 2 week long wait between
Oh,
episodes,
okay.
and it felt incredibly long. I mean, it was really really slow for me, and I don't know, maybe if I rewatch the whole thing, like binge watch it, maybe it would feel differently. But the way that they did it, I think it was very slow. The development of the storyline was really really slow.
Now,
And
well,
mhm,
I will say, I think it went quickly for me because we just kind of sped through the episodes.
mhm,
And I liked the fact that because there was a shorter amount of episodes this season,
mhm,
there were only 8 episodes. I kind of felt like, you know, at least a lot of the episodes tended to focus on one character and tell
mhm.
their story. I liked that we had a whole story that told Ian's, story,
Oh
him
yeah.
with his wife,
Mhm.
and then we had another story that was devoted to Marsley um
And
and
Fergus.
Fergus. Who
Mhm.
Fergus, another character we haven't talked that much about,
Uh-huh.
but he's just great. Not so much like he's not doing so great this season,
Mhm.
but as a character overall, I just love him to pieces,
Mhm.
especially because we meet him at first as a little kid in France
Mhm.
in season 2, and then over the course of the show he's grown into an adult, and
Yeah. I
um
mean, when he lost his hand was really painful,
yeah.
and why he did, it was really
uh,
horrible. But and this season really focused a little bit on the consequences of that, of him losing his hand, because, well, let's just say that the gender roles for men at the time were very much physical,
yeah,
and the fact that you don't have a hand, well, it shortens your possibilities of thriving in this world. So yeah, I mean, the whole conflict with Fergus was based on this, and based on the fact that he felt useless for his family and for the whole situation, and he felt guilty for not being able to defend Claire and Marcelly when they were assaulted,
yeah.
they were attacked. And yeah, I mean, I get the conflict that he went through, but I don't know, something felt weird about it.
I think I could be wrong about this, but I think I was reading, or you know what? No, I think I was told by my godmother that she read something about it where the actor was also doing something else,
Mm,
like filming something else. So they may have, and I don't know this because I haven't read the book. So
mhm,
maybe it is part of the story in the books, but I suspected that they might have crafted the story in a specific way to get him off screen for a number
mhm,
of the episodes. Again, could be wrong, but that's what it felt like to me.
mhm.
Um, so, but I hope he's doing better next season because
Yes,
because
but on the bright side of this situation gave us really great moments with Marcelly.
yeah, she is. I adore her. In spite of her
Mhm.
mother,
Oh yeah.
because she has such, and she has a strong stomach, which is why I think it
Mhm.
was in season 5, Claire enlists her to help, with like autopsies.
Enrolls her in Claire's Fraser Rich Medical School.
But she
Oh
doesn't
man.
she doesn't put
Mhm,
up with anything. She,
mhm.
the she's the boss, and
Yeah,
and
I
it's
love in this YouTube account, we love Marsley. uh, but yeah, I mean, we got really wonderful moments in season 6, but overall, this was not my favorite season at all. And I would have loved to see a little bit more of well, speaking of season 5 and season 6, I would have loved to see a little bit more of the other time travelers, and especially in this season, because in this season you don't see any other time traveler per se, but
Mm.
there is a scene in which Claire and Jamie are in this nearby town, and she overhears someone whistling a modern song.
Yes, which
Uh-huh.
my thought about the, well, I don't know if she actually hears it or not. We hear it, like,
Hmm.
but the thing is, like, that's where she's been taken to at the end of the season.
Yes,
So
but no,
so
she
I
does hear it. She does hear it.
oh, does
She
she?
does hear it
Okay.
because she's like
It's
she.
the Colonel Bodie March,
Yes.
which is I want to say it's a World War II
Hmm.
the tune, I believe. So that is very much not of the time period.
Yes, I mean I'm pretty sure that she heard it because I mean she hears it and she immediately gets puzzled by it, but then she thinks that it was
Okay.
her imagination, and then she doesn't give much importance out of it. But I mean, we did hear
I
it. Hmm.
and here's the thing, like, I know that this season was shortened to 8 episodes because I believe that Katrina Balfe was pregnant, and that
Uh,
was the reason why they had to shorten the shooting schedule. And next
hmm.
season is actually going to be, I
Longer.
believe, 16 episodes, which is
Hmm.
longer than they typically have been for the past few seasons.
Hmm.
So, and again, like, I can't say, like, if the book ends on a cliffhanger or not, like the season did,
Hmm.
but given the short episode order and what they had to do, I'm not surprised that it ended on a cliffhanger with stuff still yet to be resolved. I just can't wait until the next season because I'm eager to see things picked up, and I do love the ending of this season.
Hmm.
Just with I told you I would fight by your side, bear killer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's so great. That's
We haven't. I mean, we already have run out of time, and we are already a little bit past my normal streaming
well, there's
time.
so much.
But there's so way too much to say about this. But one of the things that I don't want to n- forget to say before we end the stream is the way that they have handled the Native American conflict. And I like the fact that Brianna here was the media where the audience gets to get some context about the whole conflict. And also, I mean, this is by her telling Jamie what lies in the future for the Native American community. And she says, okay, you know what? White people keep um, lying to the Native Americans, and they
Yeah,
never really get what they were promised. And but the thing is, one of the other things that I really need to see in this show is that they have already established that the Native Americans are sort of aware of the time traveling thing. Not per se as a time traveling thing, it's just like some magical thing that they are aware of. And I am waiting to see what or how it would develop, or it would be connected to Claire, Jamie, and
that's
I
why
mean,
I
mhm,
actually do have to go back and rewatch season 4 because that's
mhm,
where a lot of that stuff was. Um, with the time travel with the Native Americans, and the one character who was a Native American who was a time traveler. But again, it's been a
Hmm.
while, so I don't remember the specifics. So there is a big story there. So
Hmm.
it'd be interesting to see where that goes. It almost gives me incentive to break the show down season by season over on my channel. Um,
Do it.
so yeah,
Do it, and then
I'll
we'll
I'll
have an
be
excuse to keep talking about this.
exactly.
You could invite Patty as well. she's
Yeah,
Yeah, she's a huge fan.
because it's almost as though there's so much in this show that
Uh-huh.
it can't be contained in one episode.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I mean, the one of the reasons that I brought this Native American topic is because well, they have had handled the race thing. I believe that it has been very smooth. I don't know if the people from those communities may agree with me, but I mean, this show is very white centric, of course,
Mhm.
but um, I don't know how to explain it, but especially with the Native American community, they have had the opportunity to show that history has not been told the way it really was regarding them and regarding how the white people.
Yeah, I seem to recall that there has been some criticism about some stuff towards the end of season 3
With
and the stuff with the slaves on like the plantation in season
Oh
4
yeah,
and
uh-huh.
but that said, as far as I think they've done really well with the Native American storyline.
Hmm.
I mean, the writers aren't perfect, and also again, I'd point out they're telling a story that's adapted from a book, so certain storylines
Hmm.
are kind of set in stone. um but I do think, like, yeah, so I'll say I don't think they've been perfect, but as far as
Yes.
the Native American story goes, I think they've been doing a pretty good job
Yeah,
with that.
and I mean, as a Mexican, I relate more to that story than the black community could
Yeah, I
relate.
mean, the
Yeah.
problem
Mhm.
is, like, you're not going to get around the fact that our protagonists are white.
Exactly.
It's
Like, that's why I mentioned that this show is really, really white centric. I mean, it's justifiable because it's Scottish.
yeah,
It's basically the story of Scottish people getting into America. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I like the fact that they actually portrayed the fact that uh, Native Americans were basically betrayed again and
yes.
again and again, and they don't
I will
justify it. Hmm.
I will say I thought it was really, um, you know, it kind of moving still on topic, but slightly in another direction. One of the things that I really liked, sort of story wise, was the whole conflict earlier in the season was, what decision is Jamie going to make about whether to, request weapons for them or not, because they
Hmm.
don't want to be fighting against, the Native Americans, and they don't know which side of the conflict they're on. But by listening to Ian and deciding to history be damned, these people deserve to have,
The
their own
slightest chance.
their
Hmm.
fate in their own hands,
Hmm.
and then by confiding in, I have to look up the name of, but the chief, a
Hmm.
um then that comes back around to where he's earned the loyalty of
Hmm.
the chief, and he's going to fight by his side. So it's, just to show you that you can't just go by what some history book says.
Yeah.
The decision he makes there, um, shows, the chief that, he is someone worth,
Hmm.
fighting alongside, and I really like that.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're very past our typical streaming time, but thank you
Yeah,
so much for
I'm
staying.
going to,
Mhm.
just so you know, you're coming back over to my channel and we're going to talk
Of course.
about this stuff in more detail. And
Yeah.
and Patty, if you want to get in on that, just shoot me a message and we'll do that. I think there's probably some other people I can enlist as well.
Hmm.
But like this is lighting a fire under me, because
Yes. I mean,
there's too much story.
this is a very complex show that often gets overlooked because of the romance thing.
But again, bringing it
Uh
back
huh.
to the beginning, like this is why you should be watching. Do not shy away from romance, people.
Exactly.
It's beautiful, and this is, and the thing is, I get it because it is one of those things that stereotypically, men, especially like straight men, you know, sort of turn away from.
Hmm.
Um, but all it takes is one thing. And for
Hmm.
me, that was shocker of shockers. It was Pride and Prejudice. And then like I couldn't get enough of it. And don't be, like I said, don't shy away from that. Don't be embarrassed about it.
Hmm.
Like there's absolutely zero reason to be embarrassed about anything. It opens your world up to these beautiful stories that are
Hmm.
rooted in character and emotion and the you know our common humanity and the bonds that hold us together.
Yeah.
So embrace that, and hopefully for a great many of you this might be the story that does it.
Embrace your señoraness.
There you go.
Yeah, you don't have to be a lady to be a señora. I have a lot of male friends that are señoras, and they are proud of that. So there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, it's not. It's something that is very gender related, of course, but it has evolved. The concept has evolved into just being a person who likes some things that are stereotypically associated with señoras, pues. Yeah.
Yeah, and which,
Hmm.
by the way, I do feel inclined to say, since we're on the subject,
Hmm.
if those of you who wander over to my channel, if you go to the guest appearances section, you'll find some time ago I did a stream with my I call her my podcast sibling, Miss
Hmm.
Amy Blackfire. I
Yeah.
Over on her channel, we had a fantastic discussion about. Like gender norms and how that relates to stories, the stories that we enjoy, gender norms in the stories we enjoy, and so we delved so wonderfully into this topic, and I got to open up about a lot of things. So
Hmm.
yeah, if you want to hear more about that, that's a really great stream to go watch. And also go over to my channel and watch some of
Hmm.
my other videos.
Of course. You can always, if you are listening here right now, I'm going to put well, at least I'm going to put your social handle. But in the description of this video, you will find a link to John's channel. So
Thank you.
there's no excuse.
Which, by the way, I have to say, Cecilia,
Hmm.
I'm probably going to piss off Stephen or Nessie by saying this, but I did say that I've been going through some stuff for a while,
Hmm.
and so for some of the streams that I've been a part of, it's been kind of hard to find my groove and get back into the swing of things. But I had an absolute blast tonight, and I loved talking about this with you. Um, it just felt really great to dive into it and to chat with you about it. So thank you.
Thank you for being my guest. I'm just messing up with words, but yeah, thank you for being my guest. I of course I wouldn't have invited you if I didn't. If I didn't know it was going to be great. You're always a great guest, and I know that this um, this type of discussions are you are very passionate on this. I mean, of course, you always are a great guessing when it comes to Kira Knightley. If you are new to this channel, please check out the discussion on Pride and Prejudice. John was my guest on that episode as well, and
And
it
then if I
was a
don't,
blast.
then if you're not freaked out by that, go ahead and check out my other Kira Knightley streams over on my channel too, because
Hmm.
there's plenty of them.
Yeah, like a lot.
It's like
Okay, well.
it's my birthday. Let's do it. Kira Knightley stream. No.
Yeah, I mean it's raining like hail, like in that scene where Elizabeth is running on the
Oh,
rain, and yeah. So
and
let's watch Pride and
and
Prejudice. Well,
they both lean in, and
hmm,
it's almost there.
yeah.
But
Hmm.
sorry, madam, for taking up so much of your time. I'm sorry. I could go. I could launch into the whole scene. Sorry.
Okay, this rain reminds me of that scene. Let's watch Pride and Prejudice again. Okay, well, thank you so much, John, once again. And thank you all for staying, even if it's 20 minutes past our regular time. Thank you so much. This means you actually are a fan of this show. So thank you so much. Greetings to Peter, that is just turned out in the chat. So I thank you for showing up, even if it was just for a bit. And Erin, thank you so much also for being here this long.
And
And
thank you also to my wonderful godmother. If you're still watching, Marianne, love you.
greetings,
Thank you.
Marianne. And to all of you that are watching this episode after, thank you so much. Thank you all for your for subscribing, for liking this video, and for activating the little bell in order to be aware of any new content in this channel. And I know that I have been abandoning my only podcast, my only audio fans. I promise you that I will get uh uh, that I will catch up soon. I've been a little busy right now and these days, so I mean this that action requires a little bit of work. I mean I'm uploading the episodes on your podcast platforms, but I promise you I will catch up soon. But in the meantime, thank you so much for your follow, and well, we'll see you guys on the next week. I will stay tuned on my social media so you can know what the next topic will be. The next episode will be in Spanish. So if you don't speak Spanish, um, I still invite you to come around and practice your Spanish. It's great. Spanish is a great language. But anyway, thank you so much, and this is pretty much it. May the force be with you. Bye
Bye, guys.
bye.